But first, a 500-page advisory opinion by the International Court of Justice has found that a clean environment is now a human right. Countries now have an obligation under international law to prevent climate change, and if they don't, well, they'll have to pay reparations. The ICJ also said that using or mining fossil fuels like coal could constitute an international wrongful act. I mean, first, cheap, abundant energy makes countries richer, and richer countries are better for the environment. Second, if sea levels are rising in Pacific islands like Vanuatu, who led this case in the ICJ because of emissions, well, how do you actually determine who's responsible? Every country that burns fossil fuels or farms or has people who breathe, are they all going to be liable? This is insane. And thirdly, good luck trying to convince India, China or Russia to pay compensation. Paris is already dead and net zero 2050 is on life support. I mean, Holly, we have seen the UN ruin their credibility for the last 2 years, but it's been going on longer than that. This surely is the nail in the coffin.
I mean, look, thank God international law means nothing and that no one is actually going to have to abide by this because we're all sovereign nations. But Vanuatu was a really interesting case. About a year and a half ago, I went to a dinner with the climate change envoy as the speaker from Vanuatu, and he was probably one of the most abominable speakers I've ever heard. People were actively leaving the dinner because he was berating Australia so much, not only for what we were doing within our country, but also our export of coal industry. And the host of the dinner, I won't name the organisation, I was sitting next to their head of government relations, hence why I couldn't walk out. But she's given me a nudge and said, can you ask a question? I know you'll be there. And I stood up and said, look, you've given us a bit of a spanking. I said, but, you know, you're very close to China as well. Do you stand up and give the same speech to them, considering the volume of extra coal-fired power stations they're implementing every week? And if we shut down our industry like coal export, we won't be able to give you the aid money we currently do. And it was actually quite funny because the Labor member sitting next to me represents a very coal-heavy electorate, and she was very pleased with the question. But then the Climate Change Commissioner got up and said, well, I never thought I'd say this, but I'm going to ask the same question and make the same point as Senator Hughes did. So I don't think the Climate Change Commissioner and I have ever been on the same page ever before. But Vanuatu seem to be the ones pushing this barrow very, very hard. And I would suggest they're being funded by China to push a lot of this forward through international bodies so that they can continue to denigrate their neighbours in the Pacific and other Western nations, because, again, as I said and asked him the question, they don't dare say this to China.
But it's such a ridiculous thing to say. Like, this is the thing, like, so you say, all right, you know, a clean environment is a human right. Oh, thanks, International Court of Justice, thanks for that. You know, you could say the same thing, you know, freedom from hunger, you know, being able to, you know, freedom from starvation, being able to have enough food is a universal human right. Well, great. But unless you've actually got the farms producing the food, that means nothing. If you've got a famine, you know, in the 80s in Ethiopia, or if you've got Rwanda and Burundi slaughtering each other and so there's no arable farmland, or, you know, like, it doesn't, like, what is the point of making these things rights unless you've actually got a mechanism to actually deliver a result? And this is the whole thing. And this is what I don't understand, all this argument about what the target should be, or, you know, should we have a harder target on 2030, or should we get rid of targets altogether? Well, we're already building as much. And I'm all for it. I know the farmers are going through a lot and there's a lot of opposition, but I think it is something we need to do. But, you know, we're already building as much as we can. And frankly, you know, there's some stuff that we're not building because we can't, because investors are pulling out, or green hydrogen.
We should be building heli coal-fired power stations.
But
high efficiency, low emissions coal-fire, bring them back.
Sure. But again, this is the thing, like all this argument over these abstract concepts are just a complete and utter waste of time.
Yeah, and the reality is as well, is that cheap energy lifts people out of poverty. And if you're not burning coal, you're burning wood. And that is way worse. Or cow dung. That is way worse for the environment. Yeah. How many thousands or even millions of people die in developing countries from inhaling kerosene gases, wood fire pollution, because they don't have cheap and abundant energy. Energy is what creates prosperity. It's what lifts people out of poverty. It can fund the land reclamation for these Pacific islands that are sinking into the sea, but they need need to be developed and prosperous first. And for that, I'm sorry, you need fossil fuels.